Hello and welcome to this second lesson in this Inspiration Clan video course. What we're going to be doing now is selecting a stock image to replace the clouds that we removed from our landscape. And to do that, we need to actually find those images. So now what you need to do is go to stock image websites such as Pexels and search for landscape. You'll find plenty of images, and you need to choose one that has a similar perspective to your image, your landscape. So here we can see the horizon line is roughly in the middle of our image. So if you choose another image that has a horizon line similar, the result is going to look much more realistic. You couldn't have an image, for example, where you were looking up at the sky heavily over mountains. It's not going to look correct, and the human eye will be able to see that pretty quickly. So what we've done is we've got 3 example images that could be used for the replacement sky. They are in the stock image downloads that are available with this course. So I'm going to go ahead and open all of those and place them into Photoshop. So let's open our stock images and select skies 1 through to 3. That's going to open all the skies. So 1, 2 and 3. So you can see the perspective is relatively similar in all 3 images. So I'm going to go ahead and just zoom out a bit on that. And I'm going to just crop the sky out, select the sky, Command, Control and J to duplicate the layer, duplicate selection, and I'm going to click and drag that into our landscape. Command, Control, T to transform, and I'm just going to increase that to cover the whole image. Now we've got a problem here. We need to click and drag our sky layer below the landscape, then that way it's going to appear behind. So you can see there, it's looking okay, pretty average. The perspective isn't quite right. You can see that the clouds are too big for our image, a little bit too close. So let's go ahead and look at sky 2. So again, let's zoom out to get the whole image, and then I'm just going to click and drag, and then Command or Control J to duplicate our selection to a new layout. Select the move tool and then just click and drag that into our existing document. So Command T there, hold down Shift to constrain proportions, then click and drag that to cover our sky. So let's see there, roughly a little bit bigger. Press Enter to confirm the transformation. You can see the sky is actually missing a little down there, so you need to actually make that a little bit bigger, a touch bigger, and just knock it down a few pixels by pressing down on your keyboard. So there we go, that's sky 2. That looks much better in my opinion. Obviously the colours, the contrast, the lighting are different, but that looks looking good. So next we have this dramatic sky. I'm going to select this sky and I'm going to duplicate that again, Command or Control J to put the sky onto a new layout. Select the move tool and click and drag that into our working file. Control or Command and Shift to transform. Hold down Shift and click and drag the corners to transform. So let's have a look at this. Okay, that's very, very dramatic, quite high contrast. Obviously you can clearly see the difference when you place another image into a composition, the lighting and the colours, how they are different, which we will edit in the next steps. So let's go ahead and look. So we've got sky 3 there, 2 there, and 1 there. So for me, 1 is a no-go. So let's just delete that out. Backspace on the keyboard. Let's have a look at 2. Not too bad, but I think, sorry, this one was sky 3. Not too bad, but I think sky 2 is actually our best option there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove sky 3, and I'm just going to close down these documents. We don't need to save them. We've got the sky that we needed. So let's shut them down. Perfect. And now we actually have our sky. Perfect. So at this point you can have a little play around, see the positioning. It is on a separate layer and will remain on a separate layer, so we'll be able to adjust the position of the sky as we go through. So what we actually want to do now is we want to tackle the brightness. This is way too bright, so we want to actually add a levels adjustment. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a levels adjustment in here. Now this is going to help us adjust the brightness to better match the landscape. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the midtones to 1.5. Now straight away you can see how dark that is and how much better it is with that improvement straight away off the back. So again, double click and then we can adjust this down. So what we want to do, this is going to adjust the highlights. So we want to change this to, well, we can click and drag and see where we feel is right. But as we click and drag, for example, you can see it's super bright. So it starts at 255. So maybe let's knock this down to 230. Let's have a look. Okay, that's looking good. So that's brightened up the highlights. And then we want to brighten up the shadows as well. So again, if we click this down, I'm going to brighten that there. Sorry, darken. So we want to darken it slightly. Have a little play, see how you feel. Sort of the contrast, so you can look there. As we brighten the midtones and also the highlights, it actually looks like a better match if we darken the shadows, the dark areas. So this area in the cloud, this area up here in the cloud. So when it's like this, the contrast isn't high enough. So if we put this across, maybe let's say 10, then that is looking actually much better. Let's go ahead and turn that off. So that is the before, you can see very dark, and that is the after. Perfect, much lighter and much better. So now what we actually want to do is we want to brighten this area around the light source, so around the sun here. So to do that, we're going to add another adjustment layer. So we want to add that above the level. So we want to add what do we want to add? We want to add a brightness. Yeah, brightness and contrast. So pick brightness and contrast there. And again, you want to have a play with the slider. You can see if we drag that right up, that's going to put it up to 110. That's very dramatic, too high. So let's add this at about 5. And then come back in and again, turn it off, turn it back on. You can see the difference. So that's off before and that's on, so brighter. But we only want this to affect our light source, which is here in the middle, sort of across the horizon here. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our layer mask here and we're going to select the gradient. So we want the black to transparent gradient. So make sure black is selected as your foreground color. If it's white, you're going to have white up here. So select black. That's going to put black in the drop down, black to transparent. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is click and drag. So this is going to be, let's go from black at the top to transparent at the bottom. So if I click and drag to here, you can see that this now brightens up this horizon area. You can see there before, that's before, and that's after. So it's brighter along the horizon. Now it can actually be brighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another another brightness and contrast layer, and I'm going to put this up to, let's say, 10. As you can see, very bright there. It's very good to actually, gives you lots of control when you use multiple adjustment layers of the same type. So you can keep building up here the brightness and contrast adjustment layers as much as you like. If you do so, then it gives you much more control. You can target specific areas. The same with levels and curves. It's a good method to use to actually give very fine controlled results and give a very realistic result. So again, let's select this. We've selected this at 10. So we've got 10 here. We've got our layer mask selected. We want to select the gradient again. And then what we want to do is we just want to, with our gradient, this time we want to come from lower down in the image. So black is going to start there. Clear is going to be roughly here. So let's turn that off and back on. You can see there the horizon line is much brighter, which better matches our image. You can see here the image is quite bright. These clouds are bright. These mountains are very bright from the landscape. So what that does is it better matches the clouds, the image we've placed, to the landscape image. So you can see there, if I turn these off, our adjustment, so that was before, and that is with the levels adjustment. That's with the brightness, the first brightness layer, and that is the second brightness layer. So that's much better. So what we want to do now is we actually want to look at colours slightly. We'll use a simple technique. We'll just again use another adjustment layer. So we'll go to hue and saturation for the adjustment layer. And then what we're going to do, we're just going to change this slightly. See the tones changing? So over to the right is slightly more blue. So you can see if I go to 0, these blues don't match these blues very, very well. So let's zoom in to give us a better look at that. So if I hit 3 in there, you see the blues change. So let's go back to 0. You can see here, if I go to 3, there, the blues change to like these bluey tones that are in the landscape. And then they're also not as intense. They're a bit more washed out. So I'm just going to change this to 10 in the saturation, and you're going to see that jumps. These colors are a bit more intense to match the landscape. This landscape image has really intense greens, quite high contrast. So by adding more saturation, more color into the sky, we better match the cloud image that we've placed into the landscape. So there we go. That is the adjustment layers. Let's have a quick review. So let's turn them off. So levels to adjust the brightness, and levels to adjust the brightness, highlights in the highlights and the shadows. Then we've got our first brightness layer, second brightness layer, and then we have the hue and saturation to add some more color in. So that's before and that's after. Perfect. So that concludes lesson 2 in this video course. Thank you very much for joining me, and I shall see you in the next video where we will continue this edit.